Our speaker today is Chris Barnette, who grew up in Abingdon, played in a band for 10 years, then lived in Wilmington where he met his current wife. His professional work now is as a medical writer working for a clinical research organization. This is a good fit for him because of his degree in biology. He is also a published science fiction writer, and Chris is happy to be living in this area. So again, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. This is my first time speaking to a congregation. Let me first say namaste. I am here to just kind of tell you a little bit about my story and how I came to learn probably my greatest life lesson for myself. So, as some of you may know, if you've ever known me, and I'm sure Bill knows, I can ramble a bit, so I may divert occasionally, but I'm going to try to stick to the script so that we can get out of here by 12 o'clock. So, basically I'm here just to tell in my little blurb here, a brief story of a single soul, myself, on a journey of discovery and the great lesson that I've learned. And it's also an exploration on the subject of selflessness and community awareness. Okay, so let me just start by first saying, so who am I to be standing out here in front of you? Basically, who is this overly large individual standing in front of you? And yes, I joke with my friends that I've been responsible for a few Sasquatch sightings down in North Carolina. And no, I was not walking around in the suit. I was just walking around minding my own business. And people taking pictures and screaming and running. It was crazy. But who am I, basically, and how do I define myself? First and foremost, I am an earthling. I firmly believe in environmental activism and help, and the earth needs us, and we need it. So, Gi Prota is one of my favorite sayings, which is Greek for earth first. Secondly, I'm a human being, and I ask everyone to remember that the members of the human race are not the only human being, or not the only earthlings. Okay, but I first consider myself one, or secondly.
Sure.
Mother Gaia is the true source of everything that we have in our lives and need in our lives. Even though we will eventually reach out to the stars and spread humanity elsewhere, Earth is our home and where we became who we are, and where we will evolve into who we will become. So, my background first in education and experience. My first elementary school was Abingdon Elementary on the far side of Abingdon. And then when E.B. Stanley was first built, I was one of the first students at E.B. Stanley Elementary. And that is where I learned and was basically shown the beauty of music. I started in the 5th grade. Well, I started on piano when I was really young, but that didn't take. So in the 5th grade, I picked up saxophone, and with the help of a wonderful musical mentor, Claude Griever, I really got an appreciation for music and loved it. And of course, that goes through all my life. Then I went to Abingdon High School and graduated in 1982 as a Falcon, and have very fond memories of high school time. Then I did my freshman year at Emory and Henry. I loved being a WASPer, but I got accepted into Virginia Tech and then went on there to get my bachelor's in biology, which I have not used yet, by the way. Then, of course, music really was a huge part of my life. I picked up the bass guitar and started playing and started hanging out with a bunch of friends to play, and we formed a band. And in 1995, we raced away to Wilmington, North Carolina to chase our musical dreams, which is where, as you heard before, I met my lovely wife, Nancy. And we've been married since 2001. A marital odyssey, I like to joke and say. But that's another story. But throughout the music, I also started to getting into reading and writing. As an act of self-indulgence, In self-entertainment, I wrote a book, a science fiction book, and eventually got it published. It wasn't a blockbuster or anything, but it was fun to write, and I enjoyed it. So writing became a big part of my life, but I also kind of felt through all of this that I was really just living a life of self-entertainment and self-indulgence. Partied a lot. The rock and roll scene was, as you can imagine, pretty wild. But I felt like there was something missing. All right, there was something missing from my life. So through all of the fun I was having, I was still seeking something, some answer to make life make more sense to me. So I started studying religions, and I started studying philosophies. And of course, I'm not here to pass judgment on any particular religion. That's why I'm here at UU, which I love, the fact that it is all-embracing. I would only come to a church that was all-embracing. So I love the fact that there is acceptance and tolerance here of all religious pursuits. During this time that I was reading and studying, I also joined a philosophical order. It is the ancient mystical order of the Rose Cross, which colloquially is kind of known as the Rosicrucians. For many, many, many years, it was considered a secret organization. Then they became an organization with secrets. And then they became an organization of philosophy study. So they're now accepting anyone that wants to join and study. And through them, I was able to really build a reading list to explore all the different religions and philosophies that I wanted to learn from. And I was essentially seeking for an answer through all of them. I was looking for something that was common amongst them. All right, let me stick to the script. So I studied religions and philosophies, and I had to ask myself, how do I get an appreciation of the major religions without actually studying the sacred texts? And I convinced myself that I couldn't. There was no way. So let me tell you at this point, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I knew that it was going to be a huge task to undertake, but I truly didn't know how big it was. So I started reading and reading and reading. One of my favorite Greek philosophers, Heraclitus, says, read, read, reread, pray, work, and thou shalt fight. And I eventually did. So I started with what I first knew and was a little more familiar with. So I read the Bible. I read the King James Version. And I also, through the Rosicrucians, was able to get a hold of a copy of an original English translation that was directly from the original Flavian Greek version of the Bible. Subtly different, but still essentially the same. And this is where I picked up one of my favorite verses. Do not be mastered by evil, but master evil by good. Romans 12:21. I like that one. I believe in bringing good to evil. Then I read the Tanakh, the Jewish Holy Scriptures, containing the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim. And this is where I learned the 5 simple rules for happiness. Free your heart from hatred. Free your mind from worries. Live simply. Give more. Expect less. I like those. It was pretty good. So after those 2, which I was somewhat familiar with already, I moved on to a sacred text that I was always taught was controversial and evil. Here especially. And that is the Quran of Islam, where I learned to show forgiveness, enjoin kindness, and avoid ignorance. Now that I've read it, I wouldn't call it evil, not in any way. Political and subtly intolerant, perhaps, but certainly not evil. Then I went on to read a bunch of different sources. I read the Rig Veda, the Bhagavad Gita of Hinduism, most of the Gnostic texts that are found in the Nag Hammadi library, the books of Enoch, the pyramid texts of ancient Egypt, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and even the Cordia Vesta and the Zendavesta of the Zoroastrian religion. Where I learned another one of my favorites, to be a good person, have good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. I like that one. So through all of this study, I started to become aware of certain patterns of thought and similar ideas within each religion. Not all of them are the same, to be sure. Most of them, unfortunately, express feelings of intolerance towards others, towards other religions. If you don't believe what we believe, then you are lost, or worse, you are an infidel and not even considered human. That I couldn't tolerate. That to me, it seems contrary to any religious expression. But most of them also express ideas of doing the right thing and living a good life. One religious text that I was particularly fascinated by was the Vinaya Pitaka of Buddhism, which is translated as the basket of discipline, where I learned another one of my favorite quotes through studying Buddhism. This one is from the Buddha. He says, meditate, live purely, be quiet, do your work with mastery. Like the moon, come out from behind the clouds and shine. So Buddhism is certainly one of my favorites. I studied Buddhism. I read a lot of the different texts and even listened to seminars on YouTube and a bunch of different speakers. I even made an effort to explore and visit a Buddhist temple. And yes, Virginia, there is a Buddhist temple in North Carolina, in a little town called Bolivia, North Carolina, which is the county seat of Brunswick County, down near Myrtle Beach, just above the South Carolina line. The temple there is called the Wat Carolina Buddha Jakra Vanaram. And there I met, I totally recommend going and seeing the place. It's absolutely beautiful. The monks there are super nice. The most peaceful place that I've seen in years. And the abbot there, if I can say his name right, Frakru Buddhamantrika. Really great guy. I attended a few Saturday lunches where they encourage folks to bring in food and they share a big lunch. And they get to sit and listen to a lesson from the abbot and from the monks. Wonderful experience, highly recommended. I saw an interesting tradition there. The abbot eats with everyone, but what they do is they go and get samples of each of the foods that are brought, and they put them all in one big bowl, and he eats all of them all mixed in one big bowl. Not sure exactly why that is. I'm sure there's a message there. I didn't quite catch it, though. But it was interesting to see. And this is where I really learned my absolute favorite. And it was the one lesson that really just hit me deeply. Because it made me realize that I had been living my life wrongly. To me, that is. So I was there talking to the monks, and I just casually asked one of the younger monks who had only been there for a couple of years. And I asked him, I said, what to you is the best life lesson that you've learned here? What have you learned about life in general for all of us? And he turned to me and he said, well, what I've learned about life is that it's not about me. Excuse me. Life is about all of us. Life is Dharma. We are Dharma. And Dharma is a whole other concept in Buddhism that it would take another sermon here, or lesson, to explore. So wow, at that moment, it struck me. It struck me very hard. It made me realize that I had been living my life for myself only. That I was pursuing my own paths, great, doing things, and I was being nice to people. I wasn't really causing any harm, but I realized that I wasn't doing all that I could. And I was not contributing to the greater evolution of mankind. So I thought, well, this was just a wow moment for me. And at the moment he said it, it struck me hard. So I thanked him and I slunk silently back to my van where I sat and I thought about it. And I realized the deep sense of guilt that was within me. The answer that I had been seeking was now right in front of me. And it is still taking me a while to even adapt to this message and to learn from it. It was a time for a reassessment of myself and my place in the greater story. A realignment, if you will, of my values and my own purposes in life. So I did a reassessment of myself, and I made out a list of questions to ask myself. I was completely selfish in my life, so I asked myself some important questions that I would challenge anyone to answer for themselves. And I was surprised, even asking the questions, that I did have some answers for them when I was deeply thought that I did not. And most everyone will have some answers for them. And as a caveat, I will say that the answers that I have found are really deep for me and may not be the exact same answers that everybody else finds in life. So I'm not expecting everyone to take my lesson and throw on a cape and fly out the window and save the world. All right, so just as a caveat. So the questions that I ask myself is, do I take any actions solely for the benefit of others? And I found that I had over time, and I continue to do so. What do I do for my loved ones, for my family and friends? What do I do for my work associates even? What do I do for the community that I live in? And community, when I say community, I mean all of the levels of our community. Town, city, state, nation, globe. And not just taxes and legal obligations. But what do you do beyond what's considered the minimum standard requirements or obligations? What do I do for the environment? We must protect the earth. All right, so what do I do to help? What do we as individuals do for the totality of humanity? And can we do more? I think individually we all can. And like I say, no one should expect to be the next world teacher necessarily or to change the entire globe all at once. But by contributing to our community and contributing to the lives of others, we can help humanity in its evolution. Right? So, well, most easily we can say, what can I possibly do to help the whole world? It's a pretty tall order, to be sure, and can indeed be challenging even to consider it. It's also too easy, especially now in this day and age, and it's getting easier and easier, to retreat into our safe zones and to hide from the reality of humanity's predicament or state at this time. But being intelligent human beings, we can come up with a multitude of easily justifiable excuses for not doing anything. In this day and age, it has become very easy to hide ourselves away from the world, to retreat into time-consuming realms of entertainment and self-indulgence. I myself could easily sit in front of my computer and watch YouTube for days on end. So I ask everyone to consider this. We see a lot of pain, anger, hatred, intolerance, violence, and social injustice in the world. Bad thoughts, bad words, and bad deeds seem to surround us. They appear to have taken over the world and made our future appear bleak. Well, I think we can help to counter this. We can change the apparent future of mankind. So here's one simple suggestion to help make a contribution to our shared future. We can help in a simple way by cultivating the opposite. One of my favorite quotes is from the Yoga Sutra, attributed to Patanjali. When one is plagued by ideas that pervert the moral principles and observances, one can counter them by cultivating the opposite. Cultivating the opposite is realizing that perverse ideas, such as the idea of violence, result in endless suffering and ignorance. Whether the ideas are acted out, instigated, or sanctioned, whether they're motivated by greed, anger, or delusion, and whether they are mild, moderate, or extreme. Cultivating the opposite is essentially reflects back on that Romans verse. Bring good to evil. So I thought about it, okay, how can I do that? And I thought, well, we can do this in just daily messages, just in our interactions with others. Even, our social media aspects. I was looking back at some biblical scholars and discussions regarding the Sermon on the Mount. We read that Jesus spoke to a multitude of people, right? Scholars believe that could be anywhere from 50 to 150 people that were gathered around to watch. Now, I've heard all kinds of different numbers, so it's hard to tell exactly how many people were there. But I looked at my sister's Facebook account, and she has 312 friends. So I thought, I've got over 160 friends on Facebook. So if I put out a message of love and peace and kindness to everyone, I've reached out to 160 people all at once. So consider the fact that you have more power now than you realize. Usually in our little towns, we knew our families and our friends. Not a whole lot of people necessarily. But now we can actually reach out. Technology has allowed us to branch out into further places and reach people that all over the world, all over the globe. So think about sharing messages of love and kindness and peace and everything good. Good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. And share them with everyone. And look for little ways that you can share those same messages in a broader sense. So that's pretty much it. My message is not about me. It's about all of us collectively. So there you have it.